Hey ambitious dentist, welcome to Start Your Dental Practice, the show for existing and aspiring dentists to take your dental practice to the highest possible level. I'm your host, Jonathan Van Horn, CPA and ABV, founder of dentistmetrics.com. In every episode, we aim to demystify the how to start a dental practice problem by bringing on world-class dentists, influencers, and consultants in the dental industry to pick their brain about how to get past the barriers involved from going from no practice to being a practice owner to owning your own successful dental practice. Hey guys, another great interview with a titan of the industry. Miss Sandy Pardue joins us today. She is one of the most respected dental consultants on DentalTown, and you're going to hear more about her in just a minute. But first, here are a few things you're going to hear about. We're going to learn today the mistake that will get potential patients going to see other dentists instead of coming to see you, as well as how to avoid it. What job title to avoid giving your employees to prevent the confusion in their responsibilities, especially in the larger age gaps or the older age areas, whenever you have an older employee. You're going to learn the 4 parts you need to fill in your front office, as well as what personality traits to look for when hiring for them. Sandy has a really smart way of separating these out. So be sure to listen into that one piece. That's one of my favorite pieces of today's interview, is her distinguishing of those skill sets as well as responsibilities. I think it's a really smart way of doing it. It's very similar to what I recommend to my clients. We're also going to learn about the staffing ratio formula that helps make sure your business runs smoothly, why block scheduling, while Sandy is against that. We're also going to learn about how the Hawthorne effect can be applied to your practice to make it more efficient. You're going to learn some red flags about buying at certain practices, as well as the first thing you want to do as a new dental owner. And we're also going to learn some other key metrics to a high-performing dental practice. Now, Sandy knows the hiring process inside and out, as well as how to hire quality people better than anyone I know. She was gracious enough to give us access to part of her hiring process, and you're going to be able to download that today for today's free bonus. So make sure you stay all the way in to the interview to get access to it. Now here's my interview with Sandy Pardue. Hello, ambitious dentists. Today we have with us a titan of the industry. We have with us Sandy Pardue from Classic Practice Resources, Classic Practice Seminars. I'm sorry, I've read it 3 million times, and as soon as I was saying it live, it blurped out of my head. Classic Practice Resources. Sandy, thank you so much for coming on. You almost don't need an introduction. So if you aren't familiar with Sandy, she is one of the go-to people on DentalTown for answering anything related to running a dental practice. An amazing consultant. They have a Spice Up Your Practice seminar that everyone has amazing reviews on. So Sandy, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
I'm so excited to be here.
So really Sandy, for other than what I just said in my broken up, awkward introduction, tell some people out there, if they aren't familiar with who you are.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you, Classic Practice Resources is a mouthful. So
I literally, before we got on the call, I think I said Classic Practice Resources, Classic Practice Resources, Classic Practice Resources.
Yeah. A lot of people say Classic Practice, Classic. And I'm like,
okay. I feel better as a host now, so it's okay.
Okay. So I am a practice management consultant. I've been doing this since, oh my goodness, probably 1988. No. I've been in dentistry for a long time. Actually, in the late 70s, I worked in a dental practice, and then I was going to be a stay-at-home mom and ended up wanting to get back to work. And so I started working in a dental practice here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, that was very busy, that was doing about 1.2 million way back then. It was very organized when I arrived, with 17 staff, because there were no computers, so it was necessary to have a lot of people. And it was just amazing at the organization that was already there. And so I was put in place to manage this practice. And then people would come from around the world, literally, to tour this practice. And then they would ask, can Sandy come to my office? So that's how this all got started. So by 1993, I left the practice and I started going into client practices and helping them. And the rest is history.
Very interesting. So the changes from the 80s to the 90s to the 2000s to the 2010s, I imagine have been, if you look back over the course of that time frame, there's been a pretty dramatic change in the dental economic landscape, technology landscape, everything.
I would say definitely in the treatment rooms and of course with computers, because when we got our first computer in 1987, we were scheduling in 1988, which we were definitely one of the first practices scheduling on a computer. The thing that hasn't changed, which is something that we want to talk about today, is people. People haven't changed that much. And the need for good staff and the need for systems and organization and predictability, all of those things are the same.
So let's get into that a little bit. So as you know, this podcast is more geared toward the younger dentist that is getting into the wonderful entrepreneurial world of owning a dental practice, whether it be through startup or buying a practice or joining a partnership or anything like that. So let's start with the first of those, the starting a practice. If for the front office people that you are typically going to hire, you know, I see a few different docs do it different ways. I see the doc that says, I'm going to get an assistant and they're going to kind of be a front and a back office person while we get up and running. I see I'm going to hire just a person to answer the phones because I want to make sure I don't miss any phone calls. But I'm not going to be there because I'm working as an associate somewhere else 3 days a week. And then we'll see just a part-time front office person that's only front office.
Yes.
What is there a right answer? What is the right answer? What do you typically see?
There are many, many variables. And I've been working with practices, like I said, since 1993, a lot of startup practices. I work with a lot of young dentists, and I work with a lot of people that are established, of course. The young dentist, and I'll go ahead and say the established dentists, tend to focus on the technical areas of the practice because that's what they're familiar with, right?
When you say technical, do you mean the
dentistry itself?
Okay.
What's going on in the treatment rooms? And the problem with that is that the face of the practice is not in the back. So I've never met a dentist or a hygienist that wouldn't do the dentistry if they had the patient in the chair. So when you think of it like that, you've got to make sure your doors are open, that your phone can be answered. So with that in mind, you know, I'm always going to say you've got to have somebody at the front. Now, a lot of practices are trying to outsource some of that. That can get pricey and you lose control. You absolutely do lose control over what's being said, and not all the reports are good and positive. It sounds like a great idea, so you have to be careful with that. So I can't give you a specific answer because it's all of the above. It has to be, you know, it's going to depend on your budget. It's going to depend on your flow. If you're sending out marketing pieces, you better have somebody there answering the phone. And you better be prepared to get the people in quickly, because the longer you put them off when they call, the more likely they are to see another dentist, to move on to another practice. So you want to make sure you get the front office established and then add that assistant to help you.
Absolutely. You know, talking about the phone calls, we had a client that we got right after they became a startup, and they paid all of this money for a very expensive marketing campaign. I think it was, they'd agreed to a contract of something like $25,000 or something. Yes. And we'd gotten a report in that, you know, the doc hadn't looked at very many business reports. They wanted to look at it with me. I said, sure, let's look at it. And they said, well, I'm happy with it, you know, yada, yada, yada. I said, well, it says here that you had 19 phone calls from this campaign. But from what you've said, you didn't see any of these patients actually come into the practice.
Oh my goodness.
You didn't. And we dug further, and we actually contacted the marketing company, and they had luckily they were good at tracking things. They said those calls ended up being missed phone calls. So it was like 19 missed phone calls from a campaign they're spending tens of thousands of dollars on. It's a big deal. So if you're going to spend $25,000 in marketing, spend the $12 an hour or $15 an hour, whatever it is in your area, to have somebody answer that phone. So whenever you're looking for that first office person, the first administrative person, what is the PC way of saying it now? I don't even know. I always say administrative. Is that that's not the meaning, is it? Sorry if anyone out there is saying this.
No, actually, I like that better than office manager. That's what's happening is these girls are hired or women, and they're put at the front desk, and you've got this young dentist. They're 10 or 15 years older than the doctor, and sometimes 20 or 30 years older than the doctor. And they're given the title office manager. And so now they come in and they are literally, I hate to use this term, but they're bossing the doctor around. And instead of the doctor being the leader in the practice, doctor being the leader and having the staff do what they need to do. And so this is very important. So when you're advertising for that first person, you want to make sure that you don't give them the title office manager. A true office manager is managing a dozen or more staff. They're taking care of everything. They're hiring without running it through the doctor. They're firing staff without running it through the doctor. They're organizing, and they are the office manager. So if you're hiring your first staff member, you could call them a front desk manager, you could call them a scheduler, or you could call them administrative, but stay away from office manager. That'll be the first bit of advice that I give. So I see it over and over where the office manager comes in, she's given that title, she's not really an office manager, she's a scheduler, or she's a financial coordinator, or she's a receptionist, or all three in a new office where she's doing all of those duties. And then as the office grows, everyone starts going to her. She's the go-to person. The doctor's left out of the equation.
Absolutely. I think of all of our clients, there's very few that have true office managers. And I have to drill this into the clients to say, look, management means delegation and oversight. Right. It doesn't mean they are the one that does everything that no one else can do every time. Right. We had one client, I went and sat in with them for a day, and it was like the person was like, I can't get anything done during the day. And it was literally every 5 minutes, a staff member came up to them and said, here's this, here's this, here's this, here's this. And it was like entering treatment plans into the computer. It was, getting a check to be able to be written. It was all these little things that easily could have been delegated to another team member. It's exactly. Just she was the only one who knew how to do it right, quote unquote, right.
We see that all the time, and it's just not okay. And what happens is now the new dentist who's actually learning about his practice and learning how to be the leader and be the businessman of the practice, they get sucked in by these people, and soon they are held hostage, and we see it over and over again.
Absolutely. You got to be able to teach the people beneath you to be able to do that. I don't like using the word beneath. I'm not saying that they're underneath you in any retrospect. Less experienced than you, to be able to get on certain levels, to be able to do different things, just so that you can actually have someone, everyone can wear a different hat. And then the manager should be overseeing those things and assisting and growing their practice, hopefully, to be able to be a better practice. Okay. So let's circle back to the starting of the practice with the, we'll say that someone's hired an administrative person. Mm-hmm. What task would you give to someone that is an administrative person in the beginning, not an office manager, but someone that, starting a practice, you've got pretty much nothing happening. Mm-hmm. Would that be a time for training to say, let's figure out the scheduling thing. Let's figure out how to really get good at the system of scheduling, so that, maybe whenever someone else comes in, we can hire only a scheduler or only a financial coordinator or something like that.
One of the first steps to organizing anything is to put like things together. So what a perfect time when a practice is opening to start thinking like this. And what I'm talking about here is the front office has many, many, many duties. And I've listed them out, and it's actually dozens and dozens of things that they're responsible for. Mm-hmm. So when you're organizing, you want to say, okay, you want to divide the front office up into 4 parts. The first one would be the receptionist. Then you would have scheduling coordinator, financial coordinator, and insurance coordinator. So those are the 4 main administrative areas in a practice. So what you'll want to do is you want to make folders for your computer, and you'll start to organize. And what does a person that's going to be each one of these job titles, what would they need to know to do the job? So for instance, a receptionist. So what are you looking for with a receptionist? You know, you're starting out, that one person's going to do all of these things. So as you're putting these duties down, you're thinking of the personality that you're going to need to hire. And then you might be a dentist that hopes to grow the practice and eventually end up with 2 people at the front or 3 people. So in the beginning, if you start to organize it this way, it's easy now to divide these duties. So a receptionist needs to be friendly. They need to have a good tone of voice. They need to move quickly. In fact, that's for every position. That's one of the things I look at when I interview. If someone's moving slow, they walk slow, they talk slow, they're not going to be a good candidate, because nothing in your practice is more important than time. Time is the most valuable asset when it comes to scheduling and when it comes to getting work done. So the receptionist, she is efficient and she's happy to be alive, and you can hear it in her voice. That's who you want answering your phone. When you look at the scheduling position, you want someone that's not afraid to tell people what they need, and they're a go-getter. They're energetic, and they understand the importance of scheduling and the doctor being busy every day, every unit of time. And they know to focus on today, tomorrow, and day after tomorrow as they work on the schedule. And the insurance coordinator, it's really good to have someone with some insurance experience. But they have to understand how important it is to get the claims filed in a timely manner and get those insurance checks in and check on claims. So you've got the financial coordinator who has to understand that her most important job is to collect the money from the services that the doctor produced. That is her most important job. So you've got these folders on your computer. You gather data. The dentist may write it themselves. They may go to a course. They may have checklists that they've created. And now they go into those folders. And this is how you start. This is how you lay the foundation with systems and begin to get organized. People always ask me, Sandy, how do I come up with good checklists for a position? And I will tell you, the best thing to do is to make a list for each position of all of the duties, starting with answering the phone, cleaning the reception room, turning on the office stereo, confirming appointments, whatever it is, sending statements, filing insurance. And from there, you take those duties and you put them on a checklist in the order of the time of day that they need to do them. Once you have finished your checklist, now you begin to write on each item how to accomplish that item. It becomes like almost like a recipe. So you're writing it. I like to write it about the level of a 6th grader so that anyone can come in and they understand. And that's not an invalidation to a 6th grader or to an adult. It just needs to be simple.
A lot of 6th graders listening into this podcast right now. Okay, sorry, guys. Go back to your Pokemon. Or whatever.
But it's true. It's true. It's like some people write how to do something and no one can even follow it.
No, I
so
get you.
It needs to be very simple.
I agree. I love that. And the beauty behind that is once you do it, guess what happens whenever you go through it 30 times? You're going to find things that you missed, that you didn't think about, that are mistakes. And guess what? Your checklist gets added to.
There you go.
but you've got to start. You got to get going. So I love that. I love the separation into the 4 areas: receptionist, scheduler, financial coordinator, insurance coordinator, having a little folder for each person. And then as you hire, you can assign them different duties within each of those contexts.
That's right.
You've got a playbook for them to be able to just run through. I love that.
And you want them to look at the duties during the interview, so you get their agreement, so there's no misunderstandings, so they understand this is going to be my job, so they don't arrive and say, well, I didn't know he was going to have me confirm, or I didn't know I was going to have to call incomplete treatment, because they already know in advance. And then some might be wondering, well, I bought a practice and I've got 2 people up front. How should I divide those duties? Well, I'd like to just say that if you're in that situation, you want receptionist, scheduler together, and insurance and accounts receivable together, or I should say financial coordinator. So your financial coordinator and your insurance, that could be one person, and your scheduler, receptionist could be that second person.
So keeping in line with this train of thought, what are your thoughts on keeping, so you set these people in motion, you give them the details of their position, and you're trying to find the right people. You find the bubbly person for the receptionist, you find the detail-oriented, really put together person for the scheduler, or the hyper-organized and the person who is easy to talk to about money in the financial area, the person who can cut through red tape to get through the insurance one that probably has some experience. How do you tell if they're doing a good job after you've hired that person?
Well, for one, I'd like to back up just a tad.
Sure.
I want listeners to know that they have to start in this search, if they're looking for some new person to come in, not an existing staff that came with the practice, with a good employment application. I don't think that, I'm just not seeing people using written applications. They go more off of resumes, and I think they're making a mistake. So before I get to that, I would like to offer a really good employment application to the listeners.
That'd be great. That'd be fantastic.
Here's the thing. People can walk in with a resume that their husband typed, or their sister, and then the resumes, what does it tell? It's not answering any questions that I want to know the answer to. I want to know something about their skill. I want to know if they can write and spell. That's important to me. I want to know where they worked in the past, how long they were there, and why they left. And I want the names of their supervisors. And a resume doesn't tell any of that.
Very important. We had David Harris with Prosperident on as one of our first guests. And he talked up and down about how, resumes are the stories that the prospective employees want to tell, not what you want to hear. And they can put anything they want on there. I mean, they can put their father-in-law as their reference to supposedly the CEO of the past company they were on. Tons of information there. So the application is a very good way to sort through those things. And so that's a very valuable resource that you're offering. So we really appreciate that.
Yes, because we don't want the listeners to have outer views. We want interviews. So the outer view is where the applicant shows what they want the doctor to see, the prospective employer. So also you can get permission in that application for background checks, which I always do, and on front desk staff, credit checks.
Absolutely.
And that's part of it. Then I also like to test the applicant. Now, you could make up a math test, and it's important if you're hiring an insurance coordinator that they can figure percentages. And many of the staff that we have come through our seminars can't figure percentages. And
that's it's hard to spot check yourself on 20% of $100 if you don't realize that that's not,
So that's very important. And you've got to make sure you hire smart people. I love smart people. I want people that are smarter than me. I want people all around that are smarter than me. So that's what you need to find, smart people. That's why I like the Wonderlic test. And I don't know, are you familiar with the Wonderlic test?
I am familiar with the Wonderlic test. It's it's an IQ test of some sort, right?
And the NFL uses it for all their quarterbacks.
That's right. That's where I heard it from. Yeah. What about personality tests? Do you like personality tests for the different employees?
You know what? I've used some personality tests, but I haven't seen them really work. I mean, I've seen people trick those personality tests, outsmart them. And I haven't had a lot of success with that. And I think that some people have been in environments that maybe have caused them to think a certain way. And when they come in and take one of those personality tests, that when they get in this new, fresh environment, that they're different. They're not the same. So I like to hire smart people. I think that's the first thing I'm looking at. I want to make sure that they're smart, they can spell, they can figure percentages, and they move quickly and they think fast. That's my good candidate. Then I'm going to put them on the job. And I think if you've done your homework and you've got good checklist and they have good training, their behavior is going to be more to your liking.
So do you feel like that application helps point you in the right direction and all?
Oh my goodness, yes. And but think about what I just said. When they have the proper guidance and training, that's when you get good employees. You can go on DentalTown. You can look in chat rooms and you can see the complaints that so many doctors have. And then you dig deeper and they've failed to organize and establish their business. Well, no wonder they're having problems with their teams. You see? So you can't hire people, put them at a job and expect them to produce. I mean, it could happen. It could happen, but it's going to be very rare.
Absolutely. The things I always tell my docs about that come to me to ask about some type of leadership issues is I use a framework called EAC. I don't know if it's a real one. I just made it up one day. But it's basically you've got to set an expectation. You have to tell them this is what you're supposed to be doing in line.
Yes.
You got to hold them accountable, which is the A, which means that they've got to, if they succeed or fail, you have to let them know that. And then you have to be consistent in that application. I see so many people with good intentions in this industry that are docs that have done something and they do it for a couple months and it's really hard and to stay disciplined to keep on that, like daily production goals or staff incentives or all these little things. Over time, they get so dry. It seems like.
Well, you can't have predictability without consistency.
Exactly. So, so touching on that, back to the hiring and the staff. Let's assume that you had the applicants come in. They filled out this application that Sandy's been so gracious to be able to share with the audience, and you find some good applications. Do you just hire them then? I know that Dr. Dorfman talks about a group hiring process that you and her have chatted about before. Is that where that comes in, or?
I came up with the group interview about, I want to say about 1995. I
think it's brilliant. I think whenever Dr. Dorfman said that, I said, oh my gosh, whenever Sandy comes on, I've got to talk to her about that. Because that whole concept is so smart because everyone's so conditioned to go through an interview. No one is conditioned to have a group interview.
Right. I love it. We have fun with it. Did she explain it to you, or
briefly?
Okay.
What I got from it was that there was multiple applicants in the same room, and they had a few questions about how to kind of weed out the people that were that are leaders, and you had your team involved. That way, everyone's involved.
Right. Well, what we did is because mainly it was a selfish reason for coming up with this group interview because of the amount of time it would take if I were helping dentists hire or in our model practice that our founder with a large staff, it would take too much time. You'd have to interview people and set up appointments, and who's got time for all that? Especially if you're looking at a position where you'd get 20 and 30 resumes in, right? So what we started doing is, okay, let's have a group interview. And what's happened now, local dentists will call me and say, Sandy, are you having a group interview anytime soon? Because I need a front desk person. And we're like, you know what? We are going to be in town for the next couple of weeks. Let's have a group interview because it's so fun. So this is how it goes. You put your ad, whether it's going to be on the internet or in the newspaper, whatever you decide for your area. In some areas, the newspaper still works pretty well, and a lot of newspapers have online ads for jobs as well. So you put it in, but the secret here is it's kind of the same with patients. You don't put new patients off into the future. So you don't put applicants off either, because the good ones are going to find a job quickly. So what you'll do is run your ad over the weekend and plan your group interview for Tuesday or Wednesday. And do it at the end of the day when the patients have left for numerous reasons. You might need the conference room, the reception room, and you'll have to have places to park. I like to invite about 21 or 22 people. So, of course, if you're looking for a hygienist or dental assistant, you're not going to get that many resumes or applications over a 3-day period. But for the front office staff, you will, and depending on your area. So you go through and you look at the best ones and you invite them in. And when they arrive, you have planted one of your team members in this group. Okay, so they look like they're an applicant to the other applicants.
She didn't talk about that. I love that. That's very sneaky.
So she's taking note of what's happening in responses and complaining and things that are negative coming out of applicants.
We had Dr. Twan Pham on from Dental Maverick before. He says that one of the things he has his staff member do in the front is to ask them what they did last night. And you can hear like, hey, what all did you do last night? And you'll hear, he's like, sometimes they'll be like, yeah, I was up until 3 a.m. partying or something like that. And it's like, well, that probably is.
Yeah, we do that as part of the interview process. That's one of our questions. What do you like to do on the weekends? Mm-hmm. So then we give them the physical application to fill out. And then everybody's sitting there filling out their application. And then I like to come in after they're done. And what the listeners would do is they would come up with, they'd choose someone to do this. It doesn't have to be the doctor. It could be the office manager. And she gets up and she talks about the practice. And she uses specific things like, we've been here at this location for the past 12 years. Doctor's been out of school for 15 years. We have 2 hygienists, 3 dental assistants, and 4 front desk staff. The doctor has 3 cute children, and we hope to be building another practice soon in the next year or 2. So you're giving them specifics, right? Mm-hmm. And so then you might even talk about what the job would be. This position's going to be for a scheduler, and part of that would be to making sure that patients keep their appointments and the schedule's filled and Okay, now this is the fun part. So now you say, okay, I'd like you to turn your application over and write down everything you can recall about what I just said. Wow. At this point, they're like, see, think about this. You have to employ people that duplicate what you say. You can't have people I suppose you could have working for you that have to say, wait, what'd you say? Can you repeat that? Or they go off like they understood and then they don't accomplish what you needed them to do the way you wanted it done. So this is the only way to test that. So they may write down, doctor had 1 child. They, for me, they mix it all up and put the wrong dates. It's crazy. So now I just gather these up, take them in the other room. I can flip through 22 of these applications in a minute, and I can pick out about 4 people that I'll want to talk to. Because again, I don't care if they're cute. I don't care how many years experience they had. If they're not smart and they can't duplicate, smart people can duplicate. Do you know what I mean by that? You can say something and they can recall it. Those are the people I like to be around. So you'll get 4 or 5 out of 22. It happens. I've been doing this since 1995. It's always those numbers. Now you go to the door and you call Mary, Jane, Sue, Marcia, all the people that didn't do well. And you thank them for coming and let them know you're going to keep their resumes on file and dismiss them. And then I also like to send a letter to them, letting them know that, thanking them for coming and that kind of thing. Because a lot of times people want to become patients after they attend one of our group interviews, even if they're not hired, because we build up the practice. That's one thing I left out. That person that's going to speak to the applicants in the group interview, they are building up the practice, and they're making it sound like, whoa, everybody wants to work there by the time they're finished.
And I would guarantee you, every person in that group is thinking, look at all these people that want to work here.
Right. It's great PR for the practice. And so you have to make sure and send that letter out and thanking them for coming. And then you talk to those last 4 or 5 people, and I'll even give them the Wonderlic test at that point. And then I've hired someone in an hour and a half. It's done.
Very, very, very cool process. I really like that one. So you've hired the people, you found these amazing people. Whenever they're in there, every staff, every dentist I know, the front office always says they're overworked. It doesn't matter if they are or they are not. They're going to say that they're busy and overworked. And to be fair to the docs, that's all they see, because they're busy in the back, and they know the people in the front are managing the schedule and managing the patients and managing the recalls and doing all these things that are incredibly important. The doctor can't do themselves. So they see, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. So is busyness a lot of the time.
Right.
So they see them busy, because I guarantee you those people are moving around and busy whenever the doctor is up there. So they know that they feel like they're busy. Do you have any types of like rules of thumb that can kind of tell you pretty quickly if a practice is actually busy or if they're just inefficient?
Sure. What we do is I just know, because I've literally worked with hundreds of practices, and I just know that one person can handle 19 patients through the practice a day. Okay.
And that's it. So that would be a receptionist, scheduler, financial coordinator, and an insurance coordinator.
Yeah,
would be
one person can. Well, think of it like this. I've actually taken a stopwatch and timed the staff. I've taken a stopwatch and timed them. How long does it take to check out a patient? How long does it do? Sometimes it takes 1 minute. Sometimes it takes 15. But the average is 10 minutes. The average is 10 minutes to check out a patient. So, but we have figured that one person can handle 19 patients. That's greeting them, checking them out, answering phones, and doing everything else that needs to happen. After you get 19, then it's time to add a second person. Another formula is that you need one front desk staff person for every hygienist, every full-time hygienist that you have, full-time. So if you have 3 full-time hygienists, you need 3 full-time front office staff.
Okay.
And I have not seen this ever not be the case.
Doesn't matter if it's a cosmetic practice or if it's a Medicaid type practice.
Well, now, okay. So if it's a practice that does, have a lot of implants, somebody like that, it's going to vary a little bit. If it's implants mixed with a general practice, then it's not going to be that far off. Because you've got, of course, if you've got 4 patients coming in that day, you're going to need 1 person. So, I mean, I pretty much have this is a good way to do it. So, if you've got 2 patients a day or 17 patients a day or 19 a day, you need 1 person.
Makes a lot of sense. And is this for if they are using your systems, or is this that they are using like the average run-of-the-mill system?
Well, I will tell you that it's probably going to not matter that much. With our systems, this is like pretty much what we know, practices going in that we've never consulted. My goal isn't necessarily to have less staff. My goal is to do the things that need to be done to make that practice stellar. And I mean like a good experience for the patient, and people don't have to wait to get in, and they leave talking about it. And, you know, so if you think about it, and you're a CPA, so you like numbers, right? So, I mean, you think about, it's like when you look, and you like stats, like me, I love statistics. So you're looking at it like, okay, well, you know, that you can think with that makes sense, because you're processing these people. These people, how long does it take? And their ranges, of course, there'll be an extra 30 minutes or 45 minutes if you add all the actions up and time them. But this is important. This is the only way to tell. It can't be by production numbers. Some people want to say, oh, this is how many staff you need by production. Well, that makes no sense. It makes no sense to me at all. I've got a practice friend that does $7 million a year, and they have 4 front desk staff. But it's the type of practice he has, you see. It's how many people need to be processed.
You know, I don't want to run us real far over on time, but as far as the process available in these practices for these employees, what is a way? So we know the number of 19 per day patients. And by the way, I think that the patients per day metric is way more important than the amount of production a day metric. There's so many people out there and so many practices I've come into contact with, and I used to not think this way, but the longer I've been in the industry, the more I've come to realize it, that there's so many people that have these daily production goals, and it just becomes so confusing to the staff whenever they have that production goal. Because, for example, like if you have let's say you have an assistant that makes $25,000 a year, I'm just pulling that out of the air, and your daily production goal is like $8,000 a day, they don't see that as like the number that you need to be able to get over break even and make a little bit of profit. They see that as, I make I'll say 24 because the math is easier. They say, I make $24,000 a year. You pay for me in 3 days of this entire year for my entire year's worth of work. And you have all these other people that are involved in that too. Now, a lot of those could be the people giving that information. The dentist may be presenting that goal in the wrong way or in the wrong light.
That's what I think it is.
Yeah. And the thing that we've seen from the numbers we've been looking at is that the amount of production per patient on average over a long period of time doesn't really fluctuate a whole lot over time unless some type of systematic change has been in placed into the practice. And that production per day goal is never that thing that makes that change. So anyway, I got off on a little bit of a tangent there. So from the patients per day perspective, how do you tell, okay, let's say that there's right at that number for those people. How can you tell that those different positions are actually doing their jobs well within those other areas? Is it that they just they go off script too much? They go outside of those folders that we've created for them? What's a good way to judge?
Statistics. Each one of them have monitors attached to their jobs. That's how they're accountable.
Sure.
They come to staff meeting and they tell the doctor what they did. If I'm the receptionist, I'm going to report, doctor, we had 33 new patients this month, and that was up from 25 last month. And I sent out 33 welcome letters, and I sent out 20 thank you letters. And so that's how we know she's doing something. And that's the only way to manage them. They have to monitor what they do and report it to the doctor. I like the scheduler to know what she's supposed to schedule for the doctor. I couldn't imagine being a scheduler and not know what he wanted me to put on the books.
Do you believe in block scheduling?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Because it limits the schedule.
Mm-hmm.
When you do block scheduling, patients are put off too far in the future. And we know that ends up being broken appointments. That would be a whole nother podcast.
Efficient scheduling. I'd love to be able to have you on to talk about efficient scheduling, by the way.
Because all they should be worrying about is today, tomorrow, and day after tomorrow. and they should know what their goal is, what the doctor expects to produce. If the doctor's never told them, how will they ever get it? We can change that one thing, and the stats will go up. Have you ever heard of the Hawthorne effect? Hawthorne effect. It was a study that was done back in the 30s about how people's behavior changed just by knowing they were going to be watched, how they were more efficient in their work.
You know, I don't think I've read that specific study, but I know there's tons of data.
You can Google it. It's pretty interesting. Mm-hmm. And so, and we know that because when people start on our program and they know we're having them accountable for their actions, and the way we present it, it doesn't sound so like you're accountable for your actions now. That's not how it's presented. And we have them track some things, and the practice doesn't get worse. It always gets better.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, let's see, did so we've covered hiring for a startup practice, coming into a team. Well, do you have a couple more minutes? If not, you can
absolutely. No, I'm
okay.
Good.
Okay. So if someone's acquired a practice, and we see this all the time, when people are acquiring practice, they'll come in there and the old doctor has given cost of living raises every year to the staff for the last 30 years.
Or how about a big raise right before he sells the practice? We see that a lot.
Yeah. And and I don't like, I am by no means a generationist. So, the older a practice gets, typically the older the staff gets. And the less likely that staff has been to turn over the prior few years, which means that typically they aren't up to date with the computers, which you talked about being the biggest change in the last 20, 30 years. How does a new owner come into that situation? And everybody says don't change anything for the first 6 months, but they come into the situation where the overhead's really, really high because these people are truly busy because they aren't using technology in really some of the most basic ways to be able to make things more efficient.
Well, I think the first thing that new owner has to believe and know this is the fact is that chances are in a year, a lot of those people aren't even going to be there. And a lot of times the dentists will call me and say, oh, I'm going to buy this beautiful practice. The staff have all been there for 20 years. And he thinks, boy, he has hit the jackpot. Mm-hmm. Well, let me tell you, that could be the worst thing ever because people don't like change. And they're going to come in and they're going to have an opinion about the new doctor. And not always, I don't want to say it's always the case, but it's been the case most of the time. And every once in a while, we see one. I just had some people here in Baton Rouge for training that the front office staff stayed with the practice and they're doing really well. But that's rare. So the first thing that has to happen is doctor has to interview them and rehire them. I mean, he bought the practice. It's a new business. And don't think that he has to keep everyone. He doesn't have to keep everyone. Of course, patients like to see the familiar faces, of course. And if it can work out, that's great. But the doctor needs a paycheck too. So we've got to use some common sense with it as well. So I would say before you buy a practice, let's look at it on the flip side. Before a practice is purchased, you need to make sure that you look at all staff compensation and know what you're getting into for the business side. Can I afford to buy this practice? If the staff overhead's over 30%, like some of them, I've run into one recently, 34%.
Oh yeah, I've seen way worse than that.
Might not be a good buy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And another thing that I tell a lot of docs is that you've got to, that's part of the price to pay to play the game, is that you've got to be willing to make those hard difficult discussions with the staff members. And if you're not willing to, then it may not be time for you to own a practice. It may not be there yet.
No, they have to, but what staff would stay? Staff aren't going to stay if they get a decrease in pay.
Exactly.
They're gonna be out of there. So it's something that needs to be looked at when you buy a practice, just like the rent or anything else you would look at.
Absolutely. Well, you've been a fantastic resource for us today, Sandy. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us and everything. Is there anything that we've discussed that we might that you think is important that maybe I didn't ask you about?
Well, one thing I just want to be a little bit more clear about, because you did ask me about how to tell when someone's not doing their job, and I answered with the metrics.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing is the checklist. If they're utilizing checklist and they turn them in every day, people usually will not lie on a checklist in writing. What they'll do if they're not doing all the items on the checklist, they'll just fail to turn it in. Okay, you just won't get the checklist. But so you need to insist that at the end of every day, you get the checklist and hold them accountable.
That makes a lot of sense. Even internally in my company, anytime someone does something, they have to check. There's an area where they have to initial and date, and
Sure.
just the concept of initially and dating something makes it much more of they're much less likely just to flub something when they've actually signed off on it.
That's right. They're going to check it twice.
Exactly. So I like that a lot. So let's touch real quick on that, because you did ask me that and I realized I didn't follow up on it. For the 4 different areas, can you give us some example of the metrics that you like to be looked at for those people?
Okay, here's the thing about it first is that you don't want to get into to keeping so many statistics. I see these software companies that are popping up everywhere, wanting the doctors to pay a lot of money actually to track some things. And some of those things you don't need to track all of that every day. And I'll give you a quick example. It's like right now, today, I could have a doctor call me and I could ask a simple thing like, how many new patients did you have last month? Now, everybody can get that on their software, let's remember, but they don't know it. So people tend to, oh, that looks like a good idea. Let's start tracking all of that, but no one's watching. So you don't want to get into that because you can get obsessed with this. But like I said, new patients is very important. And I like to track all of the outgoing correspondence with patients. And calls out is very important for the scheduler. Like, how many calls did she make? Now, that doesn't include confirmation calls or to move appointments. That's like, this person needs an appointment, and I'm going to call them and get them to schedule. And then how many appointments did she make from the calls? How about outstanding insurance is huge. It's like every time we go into practices, we pull an outstanding insurance report and it's just out of control. And if those claims aren't paid, collections is down. So of course you're going to track production and collections, and you want to track the production per hygienist and per provider separately. I like to look at the hourly production per provider. Adjustments is a good one to look at, and accounts receivable balance is a very important one so that you can watch to see how much money is owed to you. So those could get a practice started. In hygiene, I love to track 4,000 codes because in so many practices, patients aren't getting taken care of with their periodontal disease. And so that's one thing I like to check. And then, I mean, if somebody's really into this, they want to look at more, they could track the crowns and implants and ortho cases and things like that.
Absolutely. So, and those are the types of things that they'd be reporting either on a daily basis. And, in a perfect world, if you're out there listening right now and you have an office manager, I would think in a perfect world, this would be filtering through your office manager.
Right.
So that
a true office manager, yes.
Right. And they would be saying, these people are doing a good job or not doing a good job. And then you'd be holding, and what I tell people to do is, someone will come to me and say, my AR is really high. The person in the front doesn't know what they're doing. And I'll say, well, have you actually discussed with them like what you're wanting them to get to? And they'll be like, well, no. I said, well, do you think they have the capacity to do this job? Yeah, absolutely. I said, well, maybe it's just a process issue. Have we ever talked to this person about it? And so, you've got to talk to the employee. You've got to figure out if they've got the training involved, because some people can be smart, but they don't know what they don't know.
Right.
I mean, so do they have number one, do they have the training that they've done? I mean, it's a very different situation if they've had the training and still don't make anything happen. And then they're just sitting there like, well, I don't know. And they're just making excuses all day long.
Right.
I tell everybody, if you impose accountability on people and they flub it, or they don't care, or they think they're flippant about it and say that it doesn't matter, they don't take it, they don't take the responsibilities involved, they don't think that it's really that big of a deal, guess what? They're not that great of an employee. And so it serves a dual purpose. It filters out the bad employees, and the good employees are going to love that you're doing that, because so many times in everyone's careers and anyone's jobs that you've ever had, nobody likes not having direction. I mean, whenever, my wife doesn't listen to the podcast, so I can talk about this. If I go home and, my wife's got a project for me to do, and it's something that I've not even thought about, like, I don't know, like building a shelf in a room. And she's like, she can't just say, go build a shelf in that room. She has to be like, I want it to be this kind of wood. I want it to be this height. I want it to be this far apart. Right. It has to be very precise so that I know if I'm going to do it right or not. Same way in leading people. You got to have communication. Right. And speaking back to what you said about not being too overly complex, my absolute favorite quote from, I believe it's Winston Churchill, is that complexity is the enemy of that is the famous guru now. Tony Robbins. Complexity is the enemy of execution. Being simple, doing things simply but effectively is so much more powerful, because, like we said earlier, people get tired of it, they get bored of it, it gets stale, and time just runs on and on and on, and people just start dropping off, and you quit holding these things accountable. So, again, thank you so much for today. If anyone needs to reach out to you for any type of, if they want to thank you or to talk to you about how you can help their practice, what is a good way for them to be able to get in contact with you?
They can call the office at 800-928-9289, or email me personally at sandy@classicpractice.com. And that's Sandy with a Y, SANDY, at classicpractice.com.
Okay. Well, thank you again, Sandy, for your day. Absolutely. And everyone out there, have a great day.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks to Sandy Purdue for coming on the show today. Hiring can be a daunting process, and finding great people, no matter what business you're in, is even tougher. And so to help make it easier for you today, as well as your practice, you'll want that application template that Sandy offered us on the show. So to get that for free, simply text practice to 33444. Again, that's practice to 33444, or visit startyourdentalpractice.com/bonus if you're outside of the U.S. You'll also receive updates on the latest episodes of Start Your Dental Practice, helpful tips for owning and running a practice, and promotional opportunities direct to your inbox. Again, this application is a fantastic way to be able to quickly look at potential employees. So it's worth your time to download it, look at it, and see how it can be used in your practice on your very next hire. So that's it for today's episode, but that doesn't mean that the learning and implementation have to stop there. I've created a free report called The 15 Numbers That Will Make or Break Your Dental Practice. This report has been downloaded over 1,000 times by dental professionals. So if you want your free copy of this report that's going to outline what the most important numbers are in any dental practice, and it also includes how to look at your numbers, how to set goals, has a whole slew of really important information that is the culmination of all of my experience as a dental CPA, then just go to startyourdentalpractice.com/free gift. That is startyourdentalpractice.com/free gift. And so that's it for today, Ambitious Dentist. Again, I'm Jonathan Van Horn, CPA and ABV. I'll see you next week with another world-class practice owner or consultant that will help you start your very own dental practice. Thank you guys so much for being a part of the Start Your Dental Practice community. If you enjoyed today's episode, please do me a favor and go to startyourdentalpractice.com/iTunes to leave your honest feedback and review on iTunes. It's going to help me create a better experience, a better show, a better podcast for you, the ambitious dentist. Your feedback really does help, regardless if you like the show today or not. If you didn't like the show, let me know, because it's going to help me create a better show and podcast for you. Lastly, if you know of anybody that would benefit from today's episode and today's content, today's guest, please feel free to share with them on social media or through email.